there, Mama. I'm Courtney Cecil, proud mom of two boys and an organizational culture and behavior change executive. And I'm a believer in building a movement to help the burned out, overwhelmed working moms reclaim their control and free time so that they can confidently remain in the workforce without losing their sanity or themselves. Now, let's get started. Hey there, real quick before we dive in. If you're a working mom who's constantly asking, how am I supposed to get it all done? Or you think most days something has to give, then stop what you're doing right now and add this to your calendar. So on October 20th, I'm hosting a live training called From Surviving to Thriving as a Working Mom. And inside, I'm breaking down the 3 exact shifts that I made that helped me finally stop feeling like I'm behind all the time. Actually in a place where I can enjoy putting my kids down to bed at night, even after long work days, and most especially still have time and energy left in the tank for me, for self-care without guilt. So this isn't fluff. It is the real life system that helped me go from burned out consultant and mom of 2 to running my house like an absolute boss in my career with more ease, clarity, and time freedom. It's happening on October 20th from 12 to 1:30 Eastern. So get that in your calendar. It's totally free. It's virtual, and it will absolutely change the way you manage your time forever. I promise you. So even if you can't attend, if you were listening to this and you're saying, gosh, that sounds really great, and it's either on a day that you cannot attend, or if you're listening to it later and it's already passed, I still would love for you to register so that way you can get notified as soon as the next one happens. So pause the episode right now and go register at workingmomsmovement.com/live-training, or you can get the link in the show notes, but make sure you do it now before the day runs away from you. Okay, now let's tune in. Hey y'all, I'm your host, Courtney Cecil, and welcome back to another episode of the Life Management System. Inside this episode, I am excited to host Hannah Morgan, mom of 3 from St. Petersburg, Florida. Hannah is the founder of Heron House Management. So Heron House Management, if you're not familiar, you need to be. It is a virtual house manager agency that helps working parents just like you set up systems, create a more balanced division of labor between parties, which I think is very important and so many of us struggle with. And the creme de la creme, you're essentially outsourcing your mental load. So can I get an amen there? So Hannah, welcome. I am anxious to talk to you, and I'm anxious to be able to expose your brand to so many of the families listening in to help them lighten the mental load at home.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. And I absolutely love that we connected randomly on Instagram because I was like, I've got to talk to this girl. I'm all about what you're doing. It's a perfect synchronicity. And we turned out to have so much in common on a personal note, which I love.
Yeah, I was going to say that to me, that's the mind blower right there between Virginia. Like I don't meet many people in the space that are from Virginia, but
Same.
to punctuate that, not only do we have a lot of shared connection in just the general state of Virginia, the fact that you have actually spent time in the little part of the corner that I have in Southwest Virginia, that's downright unheard of.
Yep. Same. Exactly. Yeah. Love it.
So I've got a couple questions lined up. I definitely want to talk about Heron House Management, and some of what you all do in a tactical space, but I want to lead up to that. So let's just take a step back, Hannah, to start with. Can you talk me through what you believe some of those invisible tasks are that tend to fall on moms specifically? Because let's be honest, we're the ones carrying the brunt of things until systems get put in place. And how might their partners be able to help share some of that load?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that there's this kind of in the US, there's this societal expectation that women take on more domestic duties. And when we think about that, we often think about caregiving for elderly parents, for children, cooking meals, etc. It goes so much deeper than that, though. It's the mental load of the planning, the anticipating, the managing, the cognitive load, the mental load, the emotional load. There's so much more that we're carrying that we often encompass it as the invisible load. Those are the things that we are not necessarily able to see somebody doing or to understand the weight of it, but it's something that impacts your identity, your time, your energy level, your relationship with your partner, your balance and equity at home, your ability to pursue your own career drive and passion projects and be present with your children. If you are carrying this enormous load all the time, then that can be a huge weight, and it can also stem a lot of resentment. So, we're at the age, I think, where we're a couple of years into our parenting journey, and we're starting to see friends and family who are going through divorce or tension in their relationship relationships. And a lot of times it really stems from this unspoken resentment because there is an imbalance at home. And I know that that's a universal statement. Everybody's experience is unique to them. I see it every single day on all these mom groups I'm on. Women are saying that they are fed up and they're exhausted by having to carry all this mental load. When they ask for help, they get one-off help from their partner because they don't understand that it's not about performing a task. It's about truly carrying the responsibility of the success of something. It's not about taking the kid to the doctor's appointment. It's about remembering that you have to schedule a doctor's appointment every 6 months for the first couple of years, and then every year, and you have to get the forms filled out, and then you have to get it to the school, and you have to do the physical so that you can sign them up for basketball, so that you can get them the clothes that they need, and so you can pay for camp. It's a snowballing effect, essentially. So I became much more aware of the mental load when I became a parent. And so, I married my husband. We've been together for 13 years now, and we started our parenting journey 5 years ago now. 8 years of a relationship, I didn't feel like there was an imbalance that was noteworthy. We each had our kind of lane of what we are good at and what we enjoy and what we carry at home. And that has ebbed and flowed over the years. But when we had kids, it really came to a head like, okay, wow, there's an enormous spike in responsibility that comes along with having children. And it so often falls on the woman in a heterosexual relationship. And that can be very problematic. So my journey to realizing that this was an issue was really my older sister. She's 18 years older than I am. She was the one who really turned me on to the concept of mental load and cognitive labor. And I realized, oh, that's what I do all the time. And it kind of snowballed from there, realizing that this was not something unique to my own experience, but that millions and millions of people, especially women, are experiencing every day.
Yeah, and I think that it's important that you called out the fact that this is a very United States domestic problem, especially because here most I think the stat is around 87%. I am not going to like not going to stand firm on that. But it is roughly 87% of families are dual income now. And that
Yeah.
is absolutely shocking. Whereas if you think about, like, I spent a lot of time working in India, we had a major population of people there, and I spent a lot of time with the teams on site there. The women aren't working there in the
Yeah.
ways that they are here. So it's just very different. And because more and more and more women are working,
Yeah.
we have to inherently do something different. And oftentimes we think back to, or we have tendencies, unfortunately, to be biased to what happened a couple decades ago when another generation, when our parents' generation was raising us. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My husband's mom was a stay-at-home mom. And we got a lot out of that experience. But I can't possibly compare myself to what I was carrying compared to what they were able to carry because I
Right.
have different responsibilities. So
Yep.
that also normalizes things, but that bias continues to be very, very heavy right now, unfortunately. Like
Yes.
it still exists.
Yep.
And it's shocking to me how many of my clients, even how many of their spouses are completely content not lifting a finger. And it's an extreme statement. And sometimes it is also at that extreme because in their mind, their moms did everything, ergo
Exactly.
their current wives need to do everything.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that women tend to internalize that as well. They think, oh, well, this is the way that I was raised. This is what I see. This is what is being subtly nudged to me. Maybe you get comments from friends and family like, oh, I can't believe you would ever send your child to daycare. I got that one a lot as a working mom. I was the first woman on both sides of my family to send my kids to daycare and return to work. And think about that for a minute. That's a lot of women who stayed home. And I was the first one to break that mold. I'm really glad I did because it allowed me to understand that this is a universal issue and also, we have to be realistic with the dual earning households. That's a reality of today's economy because wages have not kept up with inflation and increasing housing prices. And so, when you see two earner households, that's much more the norm. We need to be shifting what our home structure looks like to keep up with that and to stay current. Otherwise, you're going to continue to see this trend where women are essentially working two shifts. They're working their day job and then they're carrying the load at home. And that's unfair, it's unequitable, and it's also oppressive to women because it is dragging down our ability to be ambitious, to pursue passion projects, to pursue leisure. And something that I've learned through this work is people have equal right to leisure and your time is equally valuable. And because we live in this late stage capitalist world, people tend to assign value to their time based on their earning capacity. That's fine at work when you're a consultant or a lawyer billing by the hour. As soon as you clock out, your time is equally valuable as your spouse. And so that was a hard lesson to learn and to negotiate and to figure out in my parenting journey of, okay, when we both get off work, we need to figure out how we're going to make this equitable because I refuse to do 8 more hours of labor while you're doing nothing. That was not the situation. I have an amazing husband who really is breaking generational molds, but it took a lot of intention, a lot of work, and a lot of conversation to get to that point where we have an equitable split, but also where we could create systems that support that equitable split.
Yeah, I want to take the conversation to the systems part here in a second. But before we go there, when I hear you talking, it's taking me back to when my husband and I were getting married back in 2007, 2011. Gosh, 2011 that is. We were going through, he grew up Catholic, and we were going through the pre-Cana process with his community. And at that time, they asked us, like, what's the most important thing to you when you fast forward yourself 10, 15, 20 years? And even at that early stage, I looked at them, I said, it's to have equal time
Yeah.
because, it's never going to be 50-50, and I'm realistic there, but having equal free time is what is the most important thing to me because I got to see many, many relationships and within my family or beyond where the moms were the ones carrying the load
Yep.
constantly and the men got to check out,
Yeah.
because they went
Yeah.
and earned the money, then they got to check that box and they're finished.
Yeah.
And I ironically, I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom at that point. So it's ironic that fast forward however many years, here I am launching a business called Working Moms Movement. I really thought that I was going to be a stay-at-home mom, and as did my husband. Because we both grew up with one, and it was part of our experience that we
Yeah.
thought really helped make us who we are.
Yeah.
But even at that early stage, when I did still think I was going to be a stay-at-home mom, I was like, the number one most important thing to me is that free time, like the
Yeah.
balance and free time. Because to your point, leisure time should be equitable. It
Yeah.
is entirely unfair when we are making decisions on behalf of our families and how we serve them. It doesn't matter if you are staying at home, that's working. Like if you're not making money
Mm-hmm.
for an income, you are
Mm-hmm.
still a working mom.
Yeah.
You are still making that decision and that sacrifice of your career, of your intellectual stimulation, of your brand, of your growth. You are making that sacrifice on behalf of the family,
Yep.
and that deserves attention too.
Yeah.
So I just like amen to everything you just said. It just hits me in my heart and something I get really self-righteous about
Yeah.
because I mean I just see it happen so much and it breaks my heart for women everywhere.
Well, one of the reasons I started this business was really to be able to facilitate these conversations about the contribution that we often make to our families that go unnoticed and uncompensated. And when you put a dollar value on those contributions, like if you don't stay home and you get a nanny or you pay for daycare, if you get your groceries delivered instead of picking them up, you have to pay for those services. And all of a sudden, people start paying attention to the fact that that has value because it's not something that's free. So when I was looking at a job once and it was going to require being in office a couple of days a week, my husband was like, "Do you understand how much more money you would have to make that leap worth it because of how much we would have to outsource because you would be gone that much more time. We'd have to get an after school nanny, we'd have to get groceries delivered." And I had never thought about that before. But when you start to tally up all of the value that you bring to your family, whether you're working or staying at home, it can get very real about how under appreciated that contribution is. So when I started Heron House Management as a virtual house management service, one of the early conversations that spawned the idea was when I was talking to a girlfriend of mine who is a single mom by choice, and she had a house manager who was also her nanny, and she was telling me about how she would notice that the toothpaste was low and order more. And it would went beyond facilitating landscaping and cleaning services, but it was the noticing and the taking action. And I was like, wait a second, I do that. I was like, I notice when the toothpaste is low and I get more toothpaste. Like, I'm the one taking these actions. I'm the one doing the tracking in my brain. That should be a job. If this woman's getting paid for it, I should be getting paid for it. So that's when I realized, okay, we've heard about virtual assistants, we've heard about personal assistants. What if there was a way that we could elevate the value that they bring? So instead of just buying toothpaste because I told you to, you're actually doing a survey of all the products in the home and you're realizing what's low and what needs to be re-upped. That's something that a classic house manager would do. And if you hired a house manager, they would be in your home and they would be organizing the pantry and ordering new snacks and doing all those kinds of things. What I really wanted to do was to scale this, make it accessible to people regardless of their location, and to really focus on that mental load over the physical load. What is it that we can take off of your mental plate and off of your digital to-do list that really frees up your energy and your ability to be present in other areas of your life? So that was kind of the one of the early conversations that stemmed this idea.
Like that's still like, even if that's where the idea started, it is a big commitment to start an actual business, Hannah. There's a big difference between being like, you know what would be really helpful and getting that for yourself versus leaning in and doing the really freaking hard work that, I mean, I certainly underestimated before I started this. It looks hard and it's so much harder than I expected. So you are making quite the sacrifice to get this off the ground. So what made you pivot and believe in this so much that you were actually inspired to truly stand up Heron House Management?
So I had this hypothesis, which was if I need this, I bet other moms need it. It was fall of 2023, and I posted in a working mom Facebook group, hey, I'm thinking about starting this business and offering X, Y, and Z services. What would you want out of a service like this that would give it value? And I proposed this approach, which was a holistic approach to managing mental load in more of a project manager approach rather than a virtual assistant who's receiving tasks to delegate. And I had about 100 people respond and shout out their ideas of what they would really like help with. So the hypothesis was validated early on, and I had a lot of conversations in real life with my friends and with other people I connected with online who validated the concept. Once I launched the business, that's where we started to finesse our offering and how we move through the work with our clients to make sure that we're offering something that is unique and really hits at the mental load, but is able to respond to what our clients' needs are. So on our website, we have a list of about 50 plus very common requests that we. So ordering groceries, planning birthday parties, managing care for your elderly parents, scheduling doctors and dentist appointments, setting up and maintaining family schedules and calendars, coordinating with caretakers, nannies, landscapers, etc., getting quotes for and managing home improvement projects. All of those are very standard offerings, but we always love when people come to us and they say, hey, so I don't know if you can handle this, but I have this very unusual request. And we're like, yeah, absolutely. There's always value that we can bring to whatever unique and interesting problem that you're trying to tackle right now. And that's kind of what keeps this work really interesting, as it's always changing because it's responding to people's real life needs. And those are always evolving as well. So my drive to start this business was born out of realizing if my experience was this and others could validate that they had the same issue, I felt like this was a service to other working people, especially moms, to have this conversation about value and equity at home. So one of the things that I have to recognize is that this is any kind of outsourcing that costs money is not something that's going to be universally accessible to people because not everybody has disposable income. So our target clientele, they can afford this and this is something that has value for them. Maybe it's because they're able to be more present at home with their kids or because they're able to bill more hours. Whatever the reason may be, this is something that's valuable to them. That's not accessible to everybody, which is why having these conversations in free spaces like podcasts like this, we have a blog, we also have a weekly podcast where we share systems and we have experts come on and talk about systems that minimize stress at home. And then we also sell spreadsheet templates so that you can actually use some of the tools that we've developed in your own life. And those are $3 to $6. So we want to be cognizant of the fact that this conversation needs to not be contained to spaces of privilege because it's something that's experienced for many different economic situations.
Absolutely. My friend Zach Watson, I had him on the podcast a couple episodes ago. He's the mental load coach on
Yep.
Instagram. Zach made a very astute point during our conversation about the importance of labeling,
Yes.
labeling the mental load, labeling the invisible load, and how that is a very, very, very free and easy way to start reaching parity. Because when you put a label on something, when you see your spouse do something and you're like, thank you for carrying the mental load on that, or thank you for for owning the end-to-end process, including the invisible labor of X, Y, and Z. Or you're saying, I took X, Y, and Z, I took the mental load of carrying X, Y, and Z task. That labeling will start to at least tune them in a little bit
Yeah.
more to being like, oh, wait, okay.
Yeah.
It's not just about the dinner getting on the table. For example, my husband plates the dinners every night. So in his mind, it would be very easy to say, look what I did. I was
Yeah.
the one that got dinner ready. But what that ignores is what all the things that I did to get there.
Right.
Because also we have somebody that cooks for us. So like in his mind, it could be easy to say, I plated the dinner and we had Michaela cook the dinner.
Hmm.
So ergo, Michaela and I were the ones that prepared dinner. But what that ignores is the fact that I was the one that looked at the calendar and said, okay, what do we need to consider this week because of activities, because of who we're hosting, because of who's going to be here and who's not going to be here? What haven't we eaten in a while that we can go back to so we're not dipping back in the same well every time? Planning the menu based on those ideas, ordering the groceries, going to the pantry and the freezer and the fridge to see what inventory we do and don't need, making sure I leave the correct notes for the people doing our grocery shopping so we're getting the exact quantity that we need. Things like that. So
Hmm.
it ignores the fact that Michaela cooks for us, the fact that he plates it, ignores all of that stuff before.
Right.
But by me reminding him that I took the invisible labor up front that nobody else saw to make that happen,
Yep.
continues to have him appreciate, oh, yeah, there is a huge gap that has to happen in order for us to get to this point.
Right.
That's just the piece that I owned. So I think that Zach's point was very fair and very important to pull in your thread around. We need to continue making this very present across socioeconomic statuses in order to
Yep.
actually make a change.
Yeah. And, something that I realized when I first started this process with my husband, I put together a spreadsheet that was all of the tasks, all the projects, all the invisible labor. And we looked at it together and it made me realize how much I didn't realize he was doing and how much he was owning that was not on my radar because I was focused on my lanes and thinking, oh, well, he's not helping with X, Y, and Z, like the laundry or like whatever it may be. And meanwhile, there were so many things that he handled that I had no idea. And so it was a really helpful exercise to understand what was on each other's plates. So there's a model called Fair Play, which is where you use a deck of 100 cards that is supposed to encompass 100 most common tasks that working parents own, and the idea is that you deal the deck based on everybody's responsibilities that week, and you can shuffle the deck, you can redeal whatever it may be. So we actually don't use that method, and because in part the idea of it is that when you hold the card, you own it from start to finish. My husband and I have a slightly different approach, which is whoever is not quote unquote holding the card, owning the responsibility, it was often involved in the decision making process. And so, for example, if I am going to propose something, a proposal for a vacation or, some sort of summer camp arrangement or whatever it may be, I'll do the research, queue it up, run it by my husband, and he'll weigh in. We'll make a decision together, and then I'll take it across the finish line. And we do that with a lot of things. Now that we have a virtual house manager in the mix, I'm the one saying, hey, can you deal with summer camp? And then she puts together an entire proposal. He and I review it, we approve it, we give feedback, and then she's the one who takes it across the finish line. My husband can also bring projects to her and has brought many projects to her and said, I need your help dealing with X, Y, and Z. Sometimes I'm involved, sometimes I'm not. That's part of us realizing where the best use of our time and our energy and our attention is do I need to be involved in this project? Do I need to give approval on it? Is this something that the other person can run with or that I really have an invested stake in? So understanding where each of our strengths lie and then bringing somebody in to be able to support that and offload that and really own the ownership of the success of the project can be a great way of understanding, okay, how much am I contributing? How much is my partner contributing? It doesn't always have to be 50-50 equal, but when we get some help in there, it really highlights, okay, this was more than two people can handle.
Yeah, I use the language, your highest and best use? Like, how can you do the things that are your highest and best use? So, going back to my meal planning example, my highest and best use is to plan. I'm a really good planner. I'm very organized and I'm very thoughtful and intentional about looking out and being able to project our needs right now based on our future. That's not my husband's. But he does a hell of a job with what he does, right? So something like the finances, he is in finance, like true and true, unlike me, who was in banking but leading culture. He is like truly in the finance space. Him owning our finances end to end, which is a very deep process, makes complete sense. But
Yeah.
something like the meals, that has to happen every day. Me owning that outright, like fair
Yeah.
play, doesn't make sense in my head either. So we also take a very, we take elements of fair play, but
Yeah.
that doesn't work for us, and it doesn't work for a lot of my clients either. I think it's a great place for people to start,
Yeah.
but part of what I help people do is take that the step further from fair play to say, okay, this is a starting point for the conversation, and then let's unpack from there. So I'm a believer, right, wrong, or indifferent, that men in particular, very generically speaking, I should say, like, this is the 80% rule. Men in particular do a lot better with big chunks because when they don't inherently multitask, most of them don't inherently multitask as well as females. So my ability to continue playing off this meal example to manage all the moving parts of the planning part of it and the getting the groceries and that sort of thing would not be his skill set because it's too many moving parts for him. But I can give him away the big chunk of plating the meal and then cleaning up the kitchen after. That's a big chunk. It takes as much time as my chunk. So all in all, we're fairly even from the time that we've put into the process. But the difference is I took all the small things, which I tend to be better at than him. And he takes the big things, and that enables us to very smoothly run the process.
That's great.
And so I'll link this in the show notes, but I've got something for anybody that hasn't gotten it. It is my freebie on how to more productively manage your to-do list. Inside that document, though, I talk about how to very easily redistribute domestic equality, not necessarily in something as calculated as and just stringent as fair play is, but with this concept of like giving away the big pieces, recognizing that there is an element of the small pieces that's harder to fully give away. So it's not the perfect solution. Something more perfect would be what we're about to talk about with your virtual house managers, Hannah. But if you're struggling with domestic equality, even starting on giving away some of those big pieces is helpful. I'll link it in the show notes, but you can get that at workingmomsmovement.com/todo, TODO. Okay, so going back, Hannah, to the virtual house manager concept, how is that different than a traditional personal assistant service?
Yeah, so a house manager is historically, traditionally somebody that lives on site or spends a lot of time on site. They are for very, very wealthy families, and it can be a six-figure salary. And it's somebody that really owns the management of the entire home and lots of elements of the family's day-to-day life. So that's a concept that is just not accessible to a lot of people. And then there's on the other end of the spectrum the concept of virtual assistants, and this is often somebody that it lives in another country, maybe don't share the same language, maybe not. There are domestic virtual assistants, of course, but that's somebody that you say, hey, I need you to do X, Y, and D task for me. So we wanted to find a way to meet the need of relieving mental load and find somewhere in the middle on that spectrum of ownership over the well-being of the family and the bigger picture by doing that planning, managing, and anticipating, but also being able to do execution. So I'm a project manager. That is more than my profession. It's also my identity in many ways. And so applying project management to this work has been a defining aspect of our success. We use a project management management software to manage each one of our clients' family needs. And we leverage that tool to be able to do things like make sure that we are anticipating your spouse's birthday, upcoming anniversary, your mother-in-law's birthday, getting gifts for your father as well as your father-in-law for Father's Day, whatever it may be. Doing that planning, managing, and anticipating by managing a project plan for each one of these mini projects, breaking down something like renewing your driver's license. Well, that sounds straightforward, except that there's like 8 things you have to do to renew your driver's license. And only one of them is in person, which is going to get your picture taken and signing the forms. And so gathering all of the documents that you need, making the appointment, figuring out what the differences are because you just relocated to a new state, making sure it's actually done. Sometimes the appointment gets canceled or you can't make it or whatever, you have to reschedule, and that the information is correct. By breaking down a project like that, even though it seems small, into those small bite-sized tasks, looking at the tasks within the project and realizing what can the client handle and what can the house manager handle, and working together to figure out, okay, well, when we're planning parties, the client really enjoys the process of picking out the cake and getting it custom ordered, etc., but doesn't enjoy the process of finding a bounce house, of creating the invite in Canva, sending it out over Evite, picking out the party gifts, like the party favors, planning activities, figuring out what that highest and best use of your time and talents are, and then allowing someone else who might be better at the other components to really own and manage that. But ultimately, the virtual house manager is the one who is saying, your daughter's birthday is coming up in a month. We need a plan. She likes unicorns. Let's do X, Y, and Z. And then making sure that that party goes off without a hitch. So that's a difference in our approach. And so far, I haven't found anybody in the market that's really taking this unique approach to managing mental load. And I think that's part of why it's been successful, is because it really resonates with people's true, deeper need. I could tell somebody to do something all day long. That's not the best use of our service, because our service is meant to be so much more than that. And seeing the impact that it's had on our clients' lives is really, it's transformative, it's empowering, it's exciting, knowing that these conversations are happening at home between spouses when the burned out, exhausted, overworked spouse who's carrying on more labor is able to bring this to their partner and say, this is not going to work anymore. We need to do something different. And here's a solution. That's really exciting. And then also seeing our clients be able to be their best selves as a parent, to participate in volunteer efforts, PTA, whatever, knowing that they've got someone on their team behind the scenes that makes them look like the best PTA president ever, or the best daughter-in-law ever. That's a favorite one, that we do all the planning and managing of the gifts and track it against an annual, tracker, et cetera. And we make you look so fabulous. So those are fun things that we see our clients benefit from and really feel like that's a unique approach and outcome of our business model.
The word that I most picked up on there, Hannah, is ownership. Like, it's not, they are really absorbing ownership of a task as opposed to you having to micromanage, because micromanaging, sure, will give you, I'm a huge believer in delegation, and it is the only way for us to really continue to grow in life, not just at
Yes.
work, but at home too. But there's a very big difference between delegating when you have to piecemeal something to somebody and micromanage them versus when you can really empower them to own, because
Yep.
that's when it gets off your plate. That's when you're able to actually breathe and
Yeah.
have true leverage. So
Yes.
I think that differentiation is just, it's money. That's
Yeah.
critical.
Yeah. And one of the things we train our virtual house managers to do is to anticipate the feedback that your client is going to have and answer the questions before they have a chance to ask them. For example, dealing with a summer camp matrix, if you're listening to this in summer, it's, as you know, usually some sort of hodgepodge, and you've got this week here at this camp, and then you've got grandma helping, and then you're going on vacation this week. Having a spreadsheet of all 11 or 12 weeks of the camps broken down by child, by week, which camp they want to do, registration status, all of those kinds of things, having somebody own that process, but then realizing, like our house manager did for us, she said, hey, 2 out of 3 of your kids don't have camp this week. Why don't you guys take a vacation? Because you've been talking about doing it. The stars haven't aligned. We can unenroll one of your kids from his camp. And then you guys will have this, time in the middle of the summer that you can take time off. And here are some suggestions of places to go based on requirements that we've discussed in the past. Coming up with alternatives and coming up with solutions and suggestions can be so, so helpful, because otherwise your person comes to you and they say, oh, well, it didn't work out. And you're like, well, that's not helpful. What do I do now? Having somebody to really own, okay, I know your problem is childcare and spending your free time wisely. Let me see how I can solve that for you.
I love that. So to bring this home, knowing that we are talking mostly to dual income families, most particularly the female, but what systems or routines above and, whether it be using someone like Heron House Management or beyond, really speak to you? Like, you as a self-proclaimed project management expert, probably have some pretty stellar systems, institutionalized in your family. What might some of those like zingers be for people?
So, lowest hanging fruit for me always is the family calendar. This is something that's free and easy to set up. It doesn't have to be a big ordeal. You can buy a skylight or a cozy if you want to have an on counter solution, but it can really be as simple as a Google Calendar where you're able to track and manage all of the family's appointments, pick up, drop off, all of those kinds of things. That can be so, so helpful because one, in creating a system, you're creating a routine. So you can set a recurring event for, your child's physical therapy appointment that happens every Wednesday. Or you can mark down the doctor's appointment that needs to be scheduled in 6 months. I think that this is so helpful because when you are putting it in one central place, it allows other people to be involved. Your husband can no longer ask you, what time is our child's occupational therapy appointment? Because he knows where it is and where it's housed. And he can see at all times that it's on that calendar. If you bring somebody else in, like, if a grandparent or a caretaker, a nanny, whoever, a driver, anybody that's involved in the scheduling and well-being of your family, they also can have access to see where everybody is and to identify those gaps, and to help coordinate. Okay, this parent's going to pick up this kid from soccer, this parent's going to pick up this kid from school, whatever it may be. Calendaring, scheduling, that's always low-hanging fruit for me. I love, love, love leveraging a calendar for creating systems and not having to carry things around in your head because that's where we're prone to human error. But also, it can be a way to cut off the conversation about collaborating on the management of the family, especially when you have children. How you spend your time is often the most important thing. And the most important way that we delegate our resources is into managing our time. So that would be one that I really love. I really love using a project management tool. We use Asana. There are tons of other ones out there, but as long as it's something that more than one person can access, that's really important. If you're using your notes app or if you're using Todoist or any sort of app that is closed off, there are ways to share some of them, but any sort of app that lives only in your head, your piece of paper, your phone, that's not accessible to your partner, that's basically digging that rut deeper for you to continue to own that lane. So using a system that is, multiple people can participate in, but then also has recurring capabilities. So you can set a reminder to send a thoughtful card or a thoughtful gift for your mother-in-law 2 weeks before Mother's Day so that it doesn't slip off your radar because it recurs annually. That's low-hanging fruit. I really, really love doing that. I think it makes a big difference. And then there's other spreadsheets and tools that we've developed for things like gathering requirements and contractor estimates for home improvement projects, being able to track like all of the pet sitters and babysitters in your life, their name, their phone number, their availability, their hourly rate, their particularities, so that you don't have to always be the one who's lining up the pet sitter for vacation because all that contact information lives in a central hub that either you are managing or your spouse is managing, or you can tag team, whatever it may be. So those are a couple of examples of systems that I find are really impactful. They're free, they're easy to set up, they're not hard to maintain, and they can have the most impact on your family's well-being.
I love that. And I think the one that makes the biggest difference for me is the reminders, because
Yes.
I don't want anything in my brain that doesn't have to be. But I always tell people, and this is actually in the free guide that I'll link in the show notes, but I think there's a big difference between a to-do and a wish list. And so many people make the mistake of putting wish list items onto their to-do list,
Yep.
which inherently inflates the size of their to-do list. And then it makes it seem like it's really daunting, when in all actuality, it's full of a bunch of stuff that you just don't have to get done. But
Right.
something like that is time bound, like getting the card out to your mother-in-law or your mother on Mother's Day, those are time bound. That happens at a certain time every year. So
Yep.
that's the perfect kind of thing to put on that list. So you put it there once and then you forget about it until then, and then
Yeah.
when the next year comes around, you snooze it one more year, and then you snooze it one more year, and that way you never have to think about it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that wish list, I love that you brought that up. I call it backlog, or you can call it ice box, whatever you may be. Having your big picture system organized in a way that you can sort by priority, sort by due date, and that you can also have kind of a dumping ground of like, oh, one day I'd love to reorganize a garage, or one day I'd like to solve this problem I don't have any energy to throw at right now. It's not time sensitive, but I don't want to forget about it. I need somewhere to deposit that so that I can make sure I'm not forgetting about it, that I can circle back to it. One for me right now is I need to open bank accounts for my children because I want to teach them about the power of saving and investing. And it's just something that I have not been able to get onto my to-do list, but I know where it's parked. It's parked in the backlog on my to-do list. And for me, my house manager can say, hey, so I know that you're owning this, but I noticed nothing's happened with it. How can I help make this happen? So, yes, being able to park things so that they're not living in your brain. I call it the black cloud of the to-do list that follows you around. They're the things that never make it to the list, but they're still providing this pressure and this anxiety
Hmm.
and this like weight because you're like, okay, I can't forget about this in 6 months, or I think I need to change the air filters. What was that email from my school? I don't know. I gotta deal with that.
Yeah, it's what it creates most of our guilt. It's stuff that
Yeah.
we want to get around to, but inherently doesn't actually need to happen. Like
Yeah.
nobody's going to care other than you if the garage doesn't get cleaned out and organized.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's going to make it feel like $1 million when it happens, but you can still go to sleep tonight
Yeah.
and nobody's going to get hurt because of it.
Exactly. Yep.
It's
Yep.
the guilt. Okay, so Hannah, to bring this home, I'm going
Yep.
to fire some rapid lightning round questions at you that I ask every guest that I host. So the first one is, what's your go-to stress busting activity?
So my favorite is to go for a walk with a good podcast. I'm a big podcast audiobook reader, and being able to read in 5, 10, 20-minute increments has been a total game changer. So I love my neighborhood. I love going for a walk. Sometimes I'll take a kid with me. Sometimes I'll take the dog. Sometimes I'll just go by myself. Another one, this is going to sound kind of weird, but taking a nap. I find that if I'm feeling really stressed and anxious, a lot of times it's because I'm running on a sleep deficit. So the other day I was having an existential crisis and I was trying to talk to my husband about it, and he's like, I think you might be tired. Why don't you take a nap, and why don't we have a conversation about this after you take a nap? And sure enough, I woke up and a lot of the stress and anxiety was in my rearview mirror because I realized it was actually fueled by exhaustion.
Yeah, there was something that I'm absolutely going to botch, but it's something to the tune of, if if you think everybody's mad at you, you probably need sleep. If you're mad at everybody else, you're probably
You're
hungry.
hungry?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love it.
Okay. Well, speaking of podcasts, like what's in audiobooks, what's the last one that you really geeked out on?
I really love the podcast How I Built This. It's something I've listened to for many, many years. And it's interviews, in-depth, long-form interviews, about an hour long, with founders of household brands that you may recognize. And I found so much inspiration from entrepreneurs being able to share their story from day zero. A lot of times you hear the story of, and then I started this business, and then it was wildly successful. But understanding what their inspiration was for starting their business and what in their background inspired them to pursue this, and then the grind of continuing. That's always the advice I give entrepreneurs is you have to just keep going. Sometimes it's a grind. There's highs, there's lows, but if you keep going, it will end up sustaining eventually. And so learning from others from those experiences, I really love. Another favorite book is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Highly recommend it. It's a book about negotiation, and it's so powerful because it really helps you understand what is going on in a conversation beyond just negotiation. I find it very universally applicable. But the best part is the author is a former hostage negotiator, so it reads like a beach read, but you walk away feeling like you have just read the encyclopedia of negotiation. It's very cool. I recommend it to all my friends, and I just had a conversation with one the other day who said, "Oh yeah, I used that book that you recommended to me, and I was able to navigate X, Y, and Z situation." So highly recommend.
Adding to my list right now. That sounds
Yes,
fascinating.
so good,
Okay.
so good.
Next, if you could wave a magic wand, what task would you eliminate forever?
Okay, so ultimately, I would say the mental load, but I already did that because I started this business and I have a virtual house manager. So this is one that is a pet peeve of mine. I call it toddler shrapnel. So I have a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And no matter what systems we have in place, as far as like baskets and shelves and toy shelves, etc., there's still always the inevitable shoe where it doesn't belong, random toy, marker left out, whatever it is. And so if I could have somebody come and do a reset of my house every 90 minutes on the weekends, that would be amazing. Such a service does not exist, although there are people that come in and do a reset for you like at the end of the night, but it's really throughout the day. I find myself picking up toys, and I tell the kids, they're Montessori kids. They know to clean up after themselves. It's just not always a reality.
Yep, yep. I completely appreciate that. And I think many of my clients do as well. Okay, last question for you, Hannah. How do people reach you?
Yep. So you can find us on our website, heronhousemanagement.com. It's HERON, housemanagement.com. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook with the same handle, heronhousemanagement.com. And then we have a weekly podcast called De-Stress the Nest. We're available wherever podcasts are listened to, so Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. And you can also link it from our website and check it out. And that is where you can learn from experts like Courtney with their best systems for minimizing stress at home for working parents.
Perfect. Well, Hannah, it has been an absolute pleasure. This was a wildly productive, unsurprisingly, conversation. So thank you so much for being here. And until next time, friends, if nobody's told you lately, you're doing a great job. You've got this, Mama. Hey, friend, thanks for tuning in. Add the Life Management System podcast to your favorites so you don't miss my practical, snack-sized tips to help you manage the mental load and create a life that works for you. If we're not yet connected on Instagram, come say hi at Working Moms Movement for daily inspiration. And if this is your 3rd or 10th time listening, it's time you bless the small business. Share this episode with another working mom in the thick of it and take 30 seconds to rate and review. It helps more than you know. And if you're ready to go from surviving to thriving and make your day-to-day actually sustainable, email me at Courtney@workingmomsmovement.com. Mention this podcast for 25% off my coaching services. I also speak and host workshops for organizations that want to support working parents from the inside out. Reach out if you think yours is ready. This has been the Life Management System, your shortcut to less chaos and more calm. And here's your reminder to keep managing your life instead of letting it manage you.